Officer Amarnath Reddy Garu, a former DGP and a dear friend, Shri Mahendra Reddy Garu, Srimati Amala Akkineni Garu. I would also like to recognize my Director Digital Media, Dilip Garu, and to all the distinguished audience here, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, my apologies for showing up half an hour late. I know I'm in between you and your lunch. I'm presuming that you haven't had lunch, so... Oh, they did. Okay, then I haven't. I guess so. I've realized that just now. Thank you, by the way. I love the way the logo is designed, Subha. Thank you for making sure banks and governments have the same symbol and we don't actually have a separate one. Thank you, though. Thank you for at least presuming that, we have so much money that we can be symbolized and we can have a common symbol as the banks. See, I remember this conversation I had a few years ago when Honorable Prime Minister called all of us. This was, I think, about 3 years ago. He'd called us, called the heads of all political parties in the country to discuss on how to celebrate the 75th year of independence. He also had called all of us to talk about 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So I was possibly the youngest, in that room. We were all thespians, very senior people. We had Sharad Pawarji, we had Naveen Patnaik, we had, lots of other biggies. We had, the Home Minister, we had the Defense Minister, and this was an in-camera conversation. So he asked us to speak freely. He said, because there's no cameras, you can say anything and you can basically, I'm here to listen, is what he said. And he said, how do we really get to the dream of becoming the first world country, that every Indian really dreams of, every Indian really aspires to. I'm presuming that most of you in this room have been to the West, have either lived there or studied there, have worked there, and some or traveled there, if not anything else. So each and every time an Indian goes from India, travels abroad, and comes back, like I do often, like I think Rashmi does too. You complained of jet lag, so I presumed. Each and every time we come back, you come back with a mixed feeling. Just when you land in your airport and when you go back home, you start taking notice of things around. You start comparing mentally, you start looking around, you start saying, why are we like this? Why can't we be better? How are they different? Why is it that we can't get a few basics right? So when the Prime Minister actually asked us, he said, what is the key to making sure that India becomes truly a first world nation by the time we turn 100 after independence, by 2047? So I asked him if I could speak freely. He said, absolutely. And I said, sir, don't mind me saying this, but I think the mantra that we all ought to think of as politicians is on two levels. One, I think most of us politicians, most of us who are in the rigor of politics are worried and concerned about winning the next election. And from the very day you get elected till the next election, your constant focus actually, somewhere at the back of your mind or somewhere at the forefront, is actually always about winning elections. Because we are wanting to do the popular thing. We don't want to do the unpopular thing. We want to make sure that, we win the next election by hook or crook. I don't want to give stories about, what all goes on into politics and what all goes on into elections, but that is a hard reality. That's the first thing we all have to accept. The second thing, if you really have it in you as a Prime Minister, as a leader, to see India change and to see India really become a global superpower, not a notional superpower, but a real superpower. Yes, we are the third largest economy in the world today, but look at our per capita. We're still around $2,000+ compared to the US or compared to the West, where it's $60,000, $65,000. So what I told the Prime Minister is, sir, I think firstly, we need to think about the next generation, not next election. That's the first point. It sounds a bit cliched, but that's a fact, we don't. Secondly, we also need to start focusing on basics. Innovation, infrastructure, and inclusive growth. The 3I mantra, if we are able to actually latch onto it, build around it. When I say innovation, I just don't mean technology innovation or tech startups. I mean innovation in every sphere of life. What do I mean every sphere of life? For example, I'm in the government. How can I, as a government, innovate in terms of policy? How can I come out with newer policies, disruptive thinking, disruptive ideas, which actually challenge the status quo, which actually ensure that change is brought about in a record time? For instance, what we have done in Telangana, I'll just give you one example. how even a government can innovate, how even a government can disrupt. See, we've had governments in the past, we've had people, run the state in the past, we've had chief ministers, governments, etc. But today, the state of Telangana, which is in terms of the total India population, we are only 2.5% of India's population. But when national Panchayat awards are declared, and when national urban awards, municipality awards, Swachh Sarvekshan awards are declared, a state with less than 2.5% of India's population wins more than 30% of the awards. How did that happen? That happened because of one reason. That happened only because of one reason. Our chief minister decided that we will disrupt the policy, we will take the status quo head on, and we'll bring about certain changes, which will actually ensure that we perform better. What are the things we've done? Just to give you two examples. We brought in two policies. One is called the state Panchayati Raj policy. The other one's called the state municipality policy. What did we bring in these? We actually put in performance as a measure. We took performance as a measure, and we are actually calling out our councillors, our sarpanches, and we're saying if you don't perform to a certain extent, you can actually be sacked. Give you one example again. The total budget that is earmarked for a municipality or a gram panchayat today in Telangana, 10% as per statute, as per law, is actually marked towards greenery. Therefore, 10% of the budget, irrespective of which local body you are, which local government you are, goes towards greenery, goes towards maintaining a nursery, goes towards maintaining the survival of your plants, etc., etc. That's exactly why today Telangana has become a role model in how probably your villages have to be groomed, how probably your towns have to be improved. Of course, we have a long room to cover, long way to go, much more to achieve. We've made a good start, good beginning is what I'm saying. We've had the guts and audacity as a government to stand up in the assembly and say, if you do not achieve 85% of survival of the saplings you've planted, your job is at risk, to our sarpanches and to our councillors and to our panchayat secretaries. Not many governments actually have, the gall to do this. Likewise, when we actually came out with the industrial policy, we came out with a reformative policy. We said, in fact, I'll tell you an interesting episode that ensued between, interesting conversation that ensued between our chief minister and our officers. So Jayesh Ranjan, who's not here today, who's in Delhi actually working on something interesting, he was there, as part of this discussion, and there was a gentleman called Pradeep Chandra, who was our special chief secretary then, as the Secretary of Industries. So Chief Minister KCR Garu pointedly asked these two gentlemen. I was not the minister then. I was not the minister for industry then. I was the minister for IT alone. So I was not part of the conversation. So the chief minister asked both of them point blank. He said, why does the government actually have to give a clearance to any industry? So here are these two gentlemen who have put in decades of service into government, are used to giving out permissions, are used to giving clearances. And here is a new chief minister sitting across the table, asking them, challenging them, saying, why should the government even give a clearance? What is the need? So both of these gentlemen looked at each other. First of all, the specialty of KCR Garu is, most review meetings we walk in, assuming that we are fully prepared. And he's one of those guys whose first question is always out of syllabus for us. You've all written exams, I'm sure, as students, so you know what I'm saying. Always the first question, is a googly, so you're confused and you completely forget what else you have learned, right? So these two guys are scratching their head, trying to figure out a logical answer. And then Pradeep Chandra finally says, sir, but if something goes wrong, what do we do? How do we make them accountable? If something goes wrong, some disaster happens, somebody dies, God forbid, somebody has to be held accountable. So therefore, CM said, that's a very conventional way of thinking. Let's actually change it. Let's actually suggest this, that any industry in Telangana can come and hit the ground running. You can start your operations on day one. You can start construction on day one. We don't have a problem. You can self-certify yourselves, and you can declare that you are going to be a law-abiding enterprise. All you have to do is, of course, you also have to be in compliance with the law of the land. So you need to submit details online, and we'll promise all clearances in 15 days. And if you don't deliver on the 15-day window, on the 16th day, it's again a default approval, a deemed approval. No state in India had, again, the gall to say this. And on the 16th day, even a senior bureaucrat like Jayesh or even a senior officer like Mahendra Reddy Garu can be fined, can be penalized a sum of rupees 1,000 per day, again backed by statute, unlike any other state in India. So the point I'm trying to make is, innovation is not confined to industry. Innovation is not confined to startups alone. Innovation can happen anywhere. Therefore, Telangana today, in fact, in the country, we lead in ease of doing business rankings. We lead on a number of other metrics as well, purely because we've started thinking outside of the box. Second point I'd like to make quickly is infrastructure. We've focused on infrastructure. Today, when our Chief Minister goes in front of a camera and announces that he's going to build the world's largest lift irrigation project in a span of 5 years, not many people actually believed it. Normally in India, the practice has been, that a Chief Minister launches a project, especially if it's an irrigation project, you will at least need another 4 or 5 Chief Ministers to complete it and then eventually commission it. But here's a Chief Minister who's come out and said, I'm going to be completing this project, which is going to cost us about 1 lakh crore, and I'll complete it in a breakneck speed of 5 years. Not many people bought it. Today, I'm standing here proud, and you can open your Google browser and you can actually type in, key in, and check. The world's largest lift irrigation project today is not in any other country or any other state, but it is in Telangana. It is actually right here in our own country. It's Kaleshwaram. So infrastructure has been an absolute priority for us. I remember this very famous saying of John F. Kennedy, where he said, a lot of people, when we go to America or when we go to the West, we're very impressed with the highway infrastructure. We're very impressed with the infrastructure in general. I remember that saying very, very clearly and very, very vividly. John F. Kennedy said, a lot of people think America has good infrastructure because it is rich, but America is rich because it has good infrastructure. So it is imperative for all of us, for state governments, for central government to realize that we need to continue to invest in infrastructure. It could be power, it could be water, it could be roads, it could be ports, it could be anything, any form of infrastructure. It could be T-Hub, it could be industrial infrastructure, it could be any physical or digital infrastructure. It's imperative that India has to get it right to be able to move on to the next level. The third thing I told Prime Minister was that we need to be inclusive. We cannot leave out any section of the society. It could be a Muslim, it could be a Hindu, it could be a woman, it could be a man, it could be a transgender. No matter who you are, where you come from, it could be a person from a rural area, a small town, or it could be a person from America who's just come back. We need to be able to actually create a level playing field where we provide opportunities to each and every one of them. Unless we do that, unless we stop discriminating our own people based on their religion, sex, caste, whatever nonsense that divides us, unless we raise above that petty nonsense, we'll not be able to become a powerful country. He may have liked it, he may not have liked it, I don't care. But the fact is, I spoke my mind, I told him for what it is. But that isn't the only mantra I believe in. When I walked in here, I was thinking about what Ramesh was saying, what other colleagues who walked up to me and greeted me said. The other piece that people always talk about, the world over the next 1 decade, 2 decades, if you look, if you look at any articles, if you look at any YouTube stories, or if you look at, if you hear any talks, or if you hear any podcasts, you would see that everybody's talking about digitization, everybody's talking about decarbonization. I'm glad you're talking about democratization also. Once in a while, it's also good to hear that. And decentralization. Unless we focus on these 4 Ds as well, digitize as much as you can, because during COVID, we all realized the power of digital infra. The world as we knew it, the world as it functions, as we knew how it would function normally and how quickly it got disrupted, yet Hyderabad and India stood up to the challenge of what was thrown at us. And I'm delighted that none of us, not a single enterprise, not a single individual actually, has let down his institution. We have not let down any of our global clients in terms of service level agreements. In fact, if anything, we went to their rescue. We came to their rescue. Some of them who couldn't operate in the US or in the West, we actually were able to elevate our game, and we were able to support many other functions as well during the time of COVID. So I believe very strongly that the road ahead is one where we need to collaborate, we need to connect, and we need to synthesize something truly beautiful. Because we have the banking sector here, We have the financial services sector here. We also have the insurance companies here. In fact, Ramesh hasn't mentioned, but Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, the IRDA, is headquartered in Hyderabad. We need to, latch on to more of these opportunities, because together, I'm sure there's a lot more we can do. One of the things I would like to suggest from the government, Ramesh, and the entire team actually, what we can do, this government is your government, we work in a collaborative fashion, you know it. We've always taken your input, we've always taken your advice. Even when we were formulating our policies, our sectoral policies, we've always solicited advice. We have even received a lot of valuable inputs, and we always have factored in your valuable suggestions. So what I would like to propose, in the case of life sciences industry, in fact, what we have is called as a Telangana State Life Sciences Foundation, where we have industry working with us very closely. And there's a group of people who work with us very closely. And what they also do, guys, is they have actually formulated a vision document for the next 10 years and 20 years. In fact, it is their inputs that have given us a lot of insights into assessing the current ecosystem value. For instance, in 2020, when we embarked on an exercise trying to understand the size of the life sciences ecosystem in Hyderabad and how we can grow it to a certain stage by 2030, the next decade. So they came out, with numbers, and they told me, sir, the current valuation of our ecosystem is about 50 billion, and we'd be, doing well if we could, possibly look at doubling it by 2030 over the next decade, is what they said. But they came back again in 2023, early 2023, first quarter, in fact. They said, we have good news and bad news, both. I said, what? They said, bad news first, you have to revise your target. I said, good. What is the good news? They said, we said 50 billion in 2020, we are already at 80 billion in 2023. So we are going to shoot that $100 billion valuation, not in 2030, but 25 or 24 most probably. So you'll have to revise your target. Point I'm trying to make is, if you want to work as a team with the government, what I would love to see happen is, please start assessing, do a SWOT analysis of what we have, what we do not, vis-a-vis other global, BFSI nodes across the world, not just India. Start looking at them. Start looking at opportunities. See, we keep hearing the story about Gift City in Gujarat. I know it's a non-starter, but of course, I know there is a Prime Minister who wants to see it succeed, so I won't say much. And I wish them well also, because after all, they're in India. I wish them well. But I am a firm believer that you have to take the ecosystem approach, and you have to take the whole of ecosystem approach, and not look at each of you in isolation or talk to each of you separately. Together, if we can actually start doing three things. First thing I'd love to see happen, start giving us inputs into changing our course curriculum in the educational system. I think that's imperative. If you want to keep the pot boiling, if you want to ensure that this city, like you said, becomes the epicenter for BFSI sector, we need to start looking at newer courses and newer challenges, because the world is changing. Not many people understand crypto. You guys do. Probably most of you in this room do. I don't. I have to be honest. I don't understand it as much as you do. Now, we need to help our common man understand what crypto is, what digital currencies are. Most of the lawmakers in this country don't understand, anything about crypto or digital currencies. We need to start educating our people. We need to start bringing in newer elements into our course curriculums, is the first thing I'll tell you. I didn't see a lot. I know Ravi is from Mass Mutual and a very strong insurance company, but I didn't see a strong focus on actuarial sciences. I want you guys to start focusing on actuarial sciences. Tell us, how can we start something in actuarial sciences which will help, us attract more insurance companies, more reinsurers, and more of these companies coming into Hyderabad and India at large. The third thing, curriculum and a collaborative approach. And the third thing I'll tell you, if we need to compete with the Dubais and Singapores and Londons, who are all the financial, New Yorks of the world, who are all the financial hubs of the world, we need to also start looking at more and more of these opportunities. Maybe it's not required that we actually build a new physical stock exchange. Maybe we can build a digital platform. Maybe the future is all digital. We don't need a big bull and a huge sign that says Hyderabad Stock Exchange. Maybe we can build a digital exchange which will actually change the way we work, which will actually change the way we actually, start doing business. Last but not least, you mentioned cybersecurity. I had a meeting with some credit card companies. They told me that this is one of the biggest challenges they have. And of course, a challenge also presents an opportunity, and I do believe very strongly that as we move towards more and more reliance on digital infra, as we move more and more towards digitization of all of our assets, there's a huge opportunity which we cannot undermine in cybersecurity, especially in the financial services sector. If we can create a center of excellence together with the industry collaborating and acting, like how we created ISB. ISB is a classic example of what can happen in a collaborative fashion. An industry, government came together, the academia actually pitched in. Today we have India's best business school. Likewise, if we can start looking at these three sectors, actuarial sciences, maybe cybersecurity, and maybe also all the newer elements, like I said, the digital exchanges and other things that can happen, which are futuristic, which will involve everything, in dealing with digital currencies and everything else in evolution. I think that is how possibly Hyderabad can continue to maintain its pole position. Now, just to give you numbers, because I think enough of the boring speech, but just to give you numbers. In 2014, when the new state of Telangana came in, our total jobs in technology in Telangana alone were about 323,000. This is direct jobs I'm talking about, not indirect jobs, but direct jobs. And today, as of May this year, in 2023, those numbers have grown exponentially. From 323,000, from 3,23,000, today it's at 9,05,000 jobs, almost a 300% plus growth. More impressive are two more statistics that I'm going to share with you. Our software exports, because India has always been, has been working as an offshore unit for a lot of these large banks and large financial services companies. So a lot of these products that get prepared here, that get made here, are also for the world markets, right? So our software exports back in 2014 were valued at 56,000 crores of Indian rupees. But as of this year, they've risen from Telangana from 56,000 crores to 2,41,000 crores. So almost 400% growth. But what's even more impressive, again, this is something I take very personally, and I take a lot of happiness in saying this. When we started our journey, we were a laggard. We were looked at as a wannabe and somebody who's competing with Bangalore but not there. But I'm happy to share with you that last 2 years, in terms of job creation, we have surpassed Bangalore 2 years in a row. Last year, it was 33% of the total jobs created in India coming from this state and this city, Telangana and Hyderabad. This year, even more impressively, it's 44% of the total jobs created in India coming from this city. But that is not enough. I'm not going to be saying that I'm greedy, I want all 100% jobs coming from Telangana, but there are a lot of other things that Bangalore is doing, a lot other parts of the world are doing, which we aren't. We're not producing as much innovation. We are not producing as many, noticeable entities or noticeable products like other parts of the world. And that is something I would love to see change. I'd love to see how we can have more and more disruptions, more and more products in financial services, in banking sector, in insurance sector, come up from Hyderabad. Why can't we have more startups? Why can't we have more products being developed here? Why can't we actually have more platforms being built from here? So plenty of room to grow, plenty of good things that have happened, but plenty more room to do so much more. And I'd love to see you guys collaborate with us, give us inputs into policy, give us a vision for 2040, 2050. 2047 is a great number to look at because it's 100 years post-independence and we're about 24 years to there. So what can we do in a stepwise manner every 5 years till 2047? What are the ambitions that we need to, look at? And what can we do to tweak our curriculum? What can we do to upskill our task CEO is here, Shrikant Sinha. How can we actually upskill, reskill, and constantly ensure that our children also not only learn, but unlearn some of the bad things that they've learned in school? All of these things, when you come to the industry, we also have to make sure they are in place. So I'd love to see you guys, increase the group, accommodate more women. I think that's a good thing. And make sure that give us as many inputs as you can into making this state the epicenter for financial services, banking and insurance. Thank you. Great job in coming out with the consortium, and compliments to you on being the first in the country. Cheers. Jai Telangana.
Thank you, sir. Could I please request you to stay back on stage, please?